All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. In case you did not know where you are, this is Left Bank Books presents the editors and a contributing poet for Poetry as Spellcasting. The the book that reclaims the centrality of queer and BIPOC voices in poetry, magic, and liberatory spellwork. Tonight, our guests are Tamiko Beyer, Destiny Hemphill, and Lisbeth White, along with the contributing poet Hyejung Kook. Um, and tonight, the full title of the book tonight, which is so beautiful, Poetry is Spellcasting, Poems, Essays, and Prompts for Manifesting Liberation and Reclaiming Power. You can order a copy of tonight's book on our website, left-bank.com. I will share a link for the direct way to purchase the book. I want to thank you all so much for coming out virtually and for supporting the event. Left Bank Books has done hundreds of virtual events over the last couple of years, but our in-person events, you will also be happy to know, are a part of the virtual world. So all of the events that we produce will have a virtual component, allowing greater accessibility, allowing fans to join from near or far, and to be able to watch whenever is convenient for them. So if you are interested in any of our events, go to our website, left-bank.com, to find out about all of our events. One that I am incredibly excited that we just announced. We will be hosting James McBride in August. We do also have, we just announced Naomi Klein yesterday. She will be in conversation with Sarah Kendzior, who is one of my friends, and absolutely fantastic run of events for the fall. So be sure to keep an eye out on our event calendar at left-bank.com. And if you don't follow us on social media, sign up and follow us. Let me introduce the poets this evening. I would like to start with Tamiko Beyer. Tamiko is the author of the poetry collection Last Days and We Come Elemental. Her poetry and articles have been published by Denver Quarterly, Black Warrior Review, Lit Hub, and The Rumpus. Beyer publishes Starlight and Strategy, a monthly newsletter for living life wide awake and shaping change. Also joining us, Destiny Hemphill is a Black daughter of the U.S. South with nearly a decade of experience in co-creating spaces devoted to poetry, communion, and transformation. She has received fellowships from Tin House, Callaloo, and Naropa University, and is a co-poetry editor of Southern Cultures. Lisbeth White has worked in private practices as an art therapist for 13 years, supporting individual and community mental health. She has facilitated community-based workshops for healing justice work, including Black artist activist residencies at Blue Mountain Center, and has taught and coordinated healing spaces for Black love convergence, BIPOC yoga teacher trainings, and parenting for liberation. She is the author of the poetry collection American Sycamore. And Hyejung Kook's poetry has appeared in Poetry Magazine, Denver Quarterly, Prairie Schooner, Pleiades, Verse Daily, and elsewhere. Other works include essays and poetry as Spellcasting and The Critical Flame, and a chamber opera libretto. Born in Seoul, Hyejung now lives in Kansas with her husband and their 2 children. She is a Fulbright grantee and Kundiman Fellow. So now, without further ado, would you all please help me in welcoming our fantastic guests for the evening? All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Thank you so much, Shane, for that beautiful introduction and for also inviting us to gather virtually tonight. Very happy to be here. My name is Destiny. A brief visual description. I'm a Black femme with a short cropped afro, some teardrop silver bamboo earrings, and I'm not sure if you can see my shirt, but it has tarot cards on it. And I'm seated on a gray couch against a very blank wall. And I just wanted to give some context, some grounding for poetry as spellcasting, because it's such a, well, use this word over and over again, such a serpentine being. And so it has a vast origin story, like all of us, and you can read more about it in our introduction if you haven't already. I'll let you get into the nitty gritty for your own personal savoring, but what I do want to share about this book that we've collaborated on since 2020 is that it's something that we variously describe as a spell, a sea serpent, a seedling grown to a fruit-bearing tree, a love poem, and it came out of a deep spirit rumbling, knowing that poetry and ritual, poetry as ritual, can support us in harnessing language and intention powerfully, not only to reflect our current conditions, but to reimagine and transmute them. And poetry, spellcasting, and poetry as spellcasting can support us in becoming really attentive to our political realities, what risks we can take, what risks we must take towards our collective liberation, even as colonial and capitalist understandings of poetry and ritual really like to treat them as practices that can just help us ignore what we know is going on in our lives and our bodies. And these tools, poetry and spellcasting, are able to do this not only because of what they insist us in aligning and remembering, but also because of how they can be used to disrupt, antagonize, rupture, break apart. And so we're really grateful that you all have joined us for this particular virtual ritual gathering ground. And now I'm going to hand it over to my friend and co-editor, Liz, who will share more about what we'll be doing together tonight.
Well, thank you, Destiny. So also a visual description. I'm a light-skinned Black femme, mixed race. I have a curly bob right now. I'm in my office with some stained glass windows behind me and my beloved trees, the beloved trees of my home outside. And I'm zooming in from the Chimicum and Squalam lands near Port Townsend, Washington on the Olympic Peninsula. Tonight, we are going to, I think, be a little bit playful in the way that we're reading. And we're extending an invitation for all of you out there listening and watching to join with us. I'm going to read this thing that I wrote now that I'm thinking of it, I feel like this is a little bit of a land acknowledgement for poetry as spellcasting. So welcome to our lands. In poetry as spellcasting, we acknowledge and celebrate the serpentine, shifting nature of both language and ritual. And we welcome rearrangement of meaning as an innately life-giving practice. So tonight we'll be honoring this practice by reading in rounds with each other. So first we'll do one round of kind of planned readings. We'll have chosen excerpts from the book with each reader. And then after listening to each other, we'll do another round of readings with each of us in a kind of a call and response fashion. So we can just listen and receive the text and then be inspired by it and allow some new meanings and deeper understandings to open up. And throughout all of this, we're also going to be writing down kind of words and phrases that inspire us or jump out at us, and collecting those lines. And then at the end, we're going to create a collective poem with the lines that we've gathered with each other. So while we're doing all of this, we also invite you, if you feel so inspired, to collect some lines that kind of speak to you or hold some interest or mystery or charge or whatever that is for you, that capture your attention. And we also invite you to go ahead and craft a poem with those collective lines as well. So that's a little orientation of how we're going to navigate our reading this evening. And I think we're ready to get it started, yeah? So first up, we have Hyejung.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here today. Visual description. So I'm a, fair to medium toned Asian American woman. I have also a short bob, just not curly. Today I'm wearing it's norige, like Korean luck knot-inspired earrings with a blue dress. I've got sun coming in and out from the windows, and there's a watercolor Chinese painting in the back. So I'm actually going to be reading from my essay that's here. And I'm going to go a little over my 5 minutes, but I'll do less the second time around. Poetry as prayer. Listen. What do you hear in your stillness? In a moment of deep feeling, what have you heard from your innermost self? Who did you turn to? Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the angels' hierarchies? And even if one of them pressed me suddenly against his heart, I would be consumed in that overwhelming existence. For beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror, which we still are just able to endure, and we are so awed because it serenely disdains to annihilate us. Every angel is terrifying. And so I hold myself back and swallow the call note of my dark sobbing. Ah, whom can we ever turn to in our need? That's from the first elegy by Rilke. Poetry, like prayer, comes out of urgency and necessity and at times desperation. Both involve a calling out from the heart, addressed to an other with the hope of being heard. In Christianity, the invocation in prayer is usually directed toward God, angels, or saints, asking for assistance. Here, Rilke does not actually call upon the divine. He poses the invocation as a hypothetical, partly from an uncertainty of being heard, and partly from the terror of an angel who serenely disdains to annihilate us. And yet, while he declares, I hold myself back and swallow the call note of my dark sobbing, he persists in calling out, not to an angel, but to the reader, to himself, committing his words to paper. His prayer is the poem. I grew up without prayer as part of my daily life, but there was poetry, which I always loved and memorized for school and pleasure. After immigrating to the United States, I didn't go to church, but I did have godparents and attended Catholic preschool, which must be where I memorized my first poem, the bedtime prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul will keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul will take. Here is an echo of the terror that Rilke speaks of in his poem, the possibility of annihilation, which I sensed but mostly dismissed until my maternal grandfather passed away. He was a living treasure of soul, a master craftsman of Korean traditional furniture, particularly Najeon Chilgi, mother of pearl inlay work. I grew up with his furniture, and we went back to visit every few years. He was the model of what an artist was, as well as beloved family, but because of my limited Korean, I'd never had a real conversation with him, and now it was too late. When he died, I was 19, a sophomore at Harvard studying English and American literature. The only tangible thing of his I had was a jewelry box, too precious to keep in my college dorm. In the anthology, there's an image, but today I can show you the actual box. I had writing aspirations, but have been twice rejected from poetry workshops, and the ability to write creatively disappeared in the face of my first true loss. I felt ghostly, haunting the dark subterranean levels of Widener and Pusey libraries, turning on the lights to look through the stacks, searching for something, words that might ground me when my own were gone. And in my wandering, I came across Felix Grendon's edition of Anglo-Saxon charms. Here was language of origin, one of the wellsprings of modern English, vaguely familiar, but mostly bewildering. Here was poetry that was magical, charged with the intention to heal, and in my grief, it resonated deeply. While I didn't engage in rhetorical analysis of the charms at the time, I could still sense the structuredness of the metrical charms, so opposed to the incoherence of my feelings. The foreignness of Anglo-Saxon was an intellectual puzzle that also helped distract and occupy me. 12 metrical charms have survived, among them the 9 herbs charm. A spell against poison, the poem begins with an invocation of each herb that is both ritualized and intimate. Like prayer, the poem calls upon external powers for assistance, and I sense then and now a yearning to bridge distance between the self and the called upon power, as well as between the hurt and healed state, built into the structure of the charm. For example, whey bread, plantain, is invoked this way. I'm going to try my English accent. On thu whey brada wirta moder easten apena inan viktigu over the greato kuran over the quene reodan over the brude breodedan over the fieras fnardan. Ialum thu than withstående and withstundest Swatha withstående atra and ontfluye and tham lavan the yeond lond fereth. And you, waybread, mother of herbs, open to the east, mighty within. Over you carts rolled, over you women rode, over you brides cried out, over you bulls snorted. All you then withstood and were crushed. So you withstand poison and contagion and the loathsome one who through the land fares. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hyejung. That was beautiful. Hi, everyone. My name's Tamiko Beyer. I am a light-skinned mixed-race woman, Japanese and white. I have long dark hair with a streak of white at the front, and my background is a little cluttered. This view is bigger than my regular Zoom view, where you can only see the flowered curtain in the background, but now you can also see my bookshelf and a chair and my yellow walls. It looks yellow-orange in this configuration. But so happy to be here. So pleased to be reading with Liz and Destiny and Hyejung. And thank you again to Left Bank Books for having us here. And for all of you for being here. I am going to read. Sorry, I just realized I have the wrong copy of the book, or a different copy of the book than I thought I had. Sorry. So I'm going to read a poem that's in the anthology, Because Death and Birth Are of the Same Stream. And then I'm going to read a little bit from the final essay that Lisbeth, Destiny, and I wrote together. So the poem is Because Death and Birth Are of the Same Stream. I set the table for 3, ladle soup into the blue bowl for her, the others, the ones to come. Beside it, a small mirror and an ocean stone. Spirals of light shine up from the glass, my own face, hers. Evidence of her in my hair drifting into gray, the lines creasing at my eyes. How I rest my curled fingers against my lips as I listen to stories etched in decades. Women who make magic rooted in doorways and threshold gardens. In my cupboard, a jar, Eastern white pine needles, suspended in honey. Here, the fish cake. Here, the bowl of white rice. All day the sun tried to come through. All day it failed. Now evening and I am her scowl. I am the slippers on her feet, scuffing across the worn kitchen floor. Almost a century ago, thousands of miles away. Outside, the kindling catches fire under the ofuro, yellowing newspaper. Humid bougainvillea blossoms drop to the earth. I pluck a splinter from my palm. Another prayer bends its knees. Okay, so now from the final essay, I'll tell you why I was distracted. I have a copy that I have marked up, and today I sent or yesterday, I sent 2 books off to 2 different people, and I think I sent them my marked off copy, and this is an unmarked copy. So that is kind of funny and where we are. But I do remember what I was going to read here. So this is basically the very end of the essay. So the very end of the book. Well, not the very end of the book, but the end of the essay of the last essay. This is what we know. We write in the lineage of various anti-colonial histories that activate the spiritual, the lyrical, and the mystic in order to demystify the brutality of current conditions and to intercede and to intervene. We give thanks to the Haitian Revolution, Harriet Tubman, the poets of Angel Island, the writers and singers of Kundimans, Denmark Vesey, Black Arts Movement, the Civil Rights Movement, Ghost Dance, Standing Rock, and the global movements, uprisings, and revolts under the banner of Black Lives Matter. Rooted in this lineage, we believe we can use a poem as an activating ritual that helps us attend more deeply to ourselves, our communities, and our planet, to summon, to cast a new world into being. Perhaps we have not unwound time in this book, although at least one of us editors believes we did. But we have begun to unwind story, and we have begun to unwind the limits of whose story, why that story, and how a story gets to be told. In doing so, we have sought to reclaim the immensely powerful tools of change we have access to: voice, imagination, embodiment, efficacy, and sovereignty. This is a book to circumambulate, to wander around with not knowing and remembering. This is a book meant to offer tools, ideas, and practices to bring us all closer to transformation and liberation of ourselves, our community, and our world. This is a book to weave a tapestry of mystery and healing through the effervescence of poetry, the intentionality of spellwork, and the liminality of both. This is a book for us. This is our invitation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamiko. Yes, so I'm basking in the energy over here. I'm going to read an excerpt from my essay in the collection called Ain't Got Long to Stay. And in it, I'm meditating on maybe like unconventional ways of thinking of my inheritance of divination and also the political responsibilities of it. Ain't got long to stay. Tarrying in the spirit on the maroon cushioned wooden pews, laboring in the spirit while gathered in the living room turned tabernacle, rocking back and forth, side to side, under the leaky roof of an old movie theater made sanctuary. It was here and right here that I learned that the matter of spirit, matter as importance, yes. Matter as in substance, yes, was the flesh. Stay with me. The sweat that beads at the pastor's brow as he whoops, the tears that stream down my mother's face as she kneels in prayer, the peppermint that my godmother's fingers dropped on my tongue to keep my mouth busy with something sticky and sweet and thus quiet, the laying of hands, the anointing oil placed at the supplicants' temples and each of their palms, in the middle of their forehead, that was fuel for that fire in the belly and in the bones. All of this a conduit, a lightning rod, calling spirit to come down, to dwell with us, to be with us for a while. And once spirit begins its descent, you never know when somebody will catch it. There's never a time, but all the time, as in God is good all the time, and All the time, God is good. It might be during the choir selection before the sermon, or 45 minutes into the sermon, or during testimony when Mother Webb shouts, "But baby, don't you know I don't look like what I've been through?" Yes, bless this Black aphorism. May it forever stay with me as an affirmation that material violence, even when not registered as glyphs upon the flesh, leaves signs in the psyche and spirit. You never knew, but there are signs. The hush, the trembling, the deepening rumble and creak of floorboards as we stomped in rhythm to still away, still away, still away, still away to freedom. I ain't got long to stay here. The quickened rocking, the tip of tongue to the roof of mouth as though preparing for a babbling issue of tongues. In the sanctuary by the river where people would get baptized before it was poisoned, in Tennessee and Texas and Arkansas, nestled in the lap of my mother when she wasn't preaching, wrapped in a prayer cloth as a child to keep me warm. It was here that I learned that flesh, the elements, and spirit are inextricably intertwined, how the earth and the ether beyond letters share so much. This is where I learned to read the signs, to make apparent the invisible, to divine. To divine is to practice perceiving the imperceptible, to practice making a bridge between the realms of material and the immaterial. In some instances, that means making kinship with the invisible, receiving a message for your neighbor while reading tea leaves at the kitchen table along with the nightly scripture, tasting the clay, mulling its bitterness in your mouth, and knowing a drought's nearby. My mother hearing hunger in my voice by the way I say hello over the phone. Or my brother and mother offering an interpretation of one of my dreams. In the dream, I'm holding a painting I did, and the painting has dozens of eyes. I show it to my friend Mars, and they tell me that they love the lungs. Oh, well, that's easy, my brother says. Yeah? Yes, my mama says. You're getting a new perspective, breathing fresh air. Days after the dream, but before the dream interpretation in the waking world, I watch Mars and their band perform at a house show. There Mars sings a song. It's called Lungs. It has a lilting refrain of, "Can you make a little space for me?" Days after both the house show and dream interpretation, I find my great-grandmother Nellie's death certificate on an online database. She died when my mother was 8 after being hospitalized with uterine cancer, but the death certificate names lung cancer as the cause of death. Days later, another friend shares with me that in traditional Chinese medicine, lungs are the organs where grief resides. And suddenly, my ribcage expands, makes a little bit more space for this constellation of Black matrilineal grief alchemy that has been asking me to follow it, been glimmering and following me. A new perspective, fresh air, so cool, so piercing, tinkling, twinkling in my lungs. Stay with me. I won't be with you long. And I'll pause here. Thank you.
Thank you, Destiny. Always so good to hear your voice. It was so funny. I'm going to read in a second, but I have to say this. I woke up in such a mischievous kind of mood today and was like, I'm not even going to plan what I'm going to read. And then I was like, no, I'm going to plan what I read. And then Tamiko read it, which actually just feels really sweet to me. And like a beautiful part of this collaboration that's been poetry is spellcasting. So I guess I got to stay with my mischievousness over here and just go with what feels intuitively right. So I'm going to go ahead and read a poem in the anthology called Awakening of Stones, Results. And I think I'll just leave it at the title and not give any more context for you. Awakening of Stones, Results. At mile 2,219, The southwest desert is stretching, long and ashy brown as my thigh. From this distance, the ocean 452 miles away. From this dust floor, the ocean 166 million years gone, still salting the back of my throat. The way west is a ceremony of names. Morbid, one may think, or naive. On her grave, I murmured Great-Grandma Marie, a secret up from the Florida coast. In Mobile, there's Cudjoe Lewis, Olawale, Olawale, I whisper. Through Arkansas, through Oklahoma, words and people and the grasses, wafting waist high in litany. Quapaw, Tonkawa, Iskani. Soon I will say bear's ears. Soon I will say yellow-faced bee. Soon I will say Monotropa uniflora, the ghost plant, whose medicine puts us beside our pain, that we may utter a name for its shape and call it something other than ourselves. These are pathways one must be laid bare upon. One must be flayed open to hear. I scrabble up granite creststone to listen in clear air, burst the plump promise in my fingertips and call the blood sweetness. But it must be known, I am no woman of nostalgia. Never was I speaking the dead, but naming those who lived. Why bother calling memory what is altogether sovereign from the mind and comes swinging out from the ribs like a swift? What leaves must be sung to as it goes. We must let unfurl the root of our bodies, span down, across, up, the crossroads, as they say, and feel the ground beneath. And then I want to read just like one of my favorite couple short paragraphs from my essay in this anthology, which is about enchantment and the liberatory gift of wonder. I read this the other day and it made me laugh. One of my poet comrades shared emphatically that he didn't want to read a poem about a tree unless the poet sat with that tree long enough to be changed by it. Did you let that tree make you into something different? No? Then don't waste my time. I laughed at his stark delivery, but felt a tugging memory of those trees outside my childhood window. What it felt like to see them with such curiosity and awe. How my own body would calm or excite with a shift in the light. How I never knew what I would perceive until I sat in the still center of myself and opened my senses completely. Only then might I see something of the trees. And I'm going to end there. We'll go around again and see what happens.
All right, I have successfully unmuted. Thank you all so much for your words. I'm going to jump to the middle. I'm going to jump to the middle of my essay. And before it, I talk about Lucille Clifton's Blessing the Boats, and I talk about the Anglo-Saxon charm, and just talking about how I've been looking at poetry and prayer through formal understanding, but a reliance on forms and formulas only goes so far. When we are in extremity, when we are calling out in desperation, there is a place where the only thing that will work is to make anew, where no old form has the answer. All words seem to fail, but silence would swallow us whole. When my grandfather passed, retreating into Anglo-Saxon charms was only a temporary escape and reprieve. Eventually, I had to step forward into darkness, hands outstretched, into the not knowing. The only way to emerge was to go through. Listen, I need to begin again. I need to go to my own origin and lineages, the places I falter and feel uncertain. Can you hear it? 내 마음의 소리, the sound of my heart beating faster and faster. My first language was Korean. I was born in Korea and came to the States when I was 11 months old. I lost my fluency when I started kindergarten, but I still remember my parents telling me stories and singing children's songs in Korean. The first prayers I heard, though I can't remember them, were Buddhist, living in my maternal grandfather's house when I was a baby. In 1988, when we visited for the first time since leaving, my sister and I slept in my grandparents' room, and every morning I would wake and then fall back asleep listening to my grandmother chanting a Buddhist text. I couldn't understand most of the words, so her prayer was mainly sound and feeling, like music, and her voice, rising and falling, would carry me back to sleep. I am reminded that a lullaby is a kind of prayer spell our caretakers fervently hoping to make sleep come by virtue of saying the words. I went to a Buddhist temple for the first time with my paternal grandparents and learned how to bow before the golden Buddha, from standing to kneeling to pressing hands and forehead to the ground, then turning the palms upward and lifting the hands slightly. And I felt myself fall away in my focus on the movements. This genuflection was almost identical to kunjal, big bow, performed for elders and ancestors, except kunjal does not include the palm turn and lift. During this trip, I performed kunjal for the first time at my father's family's graveside plot in the mountains, paying my respects to ancestors I had never met. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Hyejung. So for those of you who are just joining, or if you forgot, what we're doing now is we're doing another round of readings where we're kind of picking up, inspired by what our co-readers read. And so actually that spell with the plantain made me think of this section in that it's actually the beginning of my essay in the book. The essay is called Practice, Repetition, and Return. So I'm just going to read from the beginning of the essay. Every morning, my partner, our two dogs, and I set out into our neighborhood, which occupies the land of the Neponset tribe of the Massachusetts people. Half a block from our home, we chat with the knot of retired men gathered outside the coffee shop. We make our way down streets lined with old brick factories on the banks of the Neponset River, close to where it enters the Dorchester Bay. On a good day, we run into the dog's dear friend, a healthcare worker making her way to the trolley stop. We wave to the hairstylist through the plate glass salon window and turn off the street. We greet a giant oak and beech standing in the field and say hello to mugwort as it makes its wild and steady spurt to the sky through spring and summer. We greet wild roses by inhaling their luscious scent and nod to the bees who crowd each other at the lips of their blooms. When we arrive at the river, the creatures who live there all or part of the year call to each other, and we call out to them: heron, Canada geese, the white-crested duck who has somehow made a family of mallard, a family among the mallards, chipmunks, osprey, plovers, kingfishers, and eagles. At the water's edge, I crouch down, take out my pouch filled with homegrown herbs, sage, tulsi, rosemary. I offer thanks to the spirits, ancestors, and past and current indigenous stewards of the land and river. I give further thanks to my ancestors, spiritual guides, and guardians. I make prayers for the day, ask for blessings and protection for me, my loved ones, and all beings. I set the dried herbs in the mud or float the water. Patty and I exchange few words of love and gratitude for each other. Then, with one final glance toward the water, we turn toward home. And skipping a little bit. There are 2 simple phrases I repeat each morning, along with whatever else I'm praying for. These have become sacred to me through this repeated ritual, morning after morning, a prayer and a spell for all beings as we live into the day ahead of us. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamiko. The naming of mugwort and other herbs made me think of ingredients. So, yeah, this is my contribution offering to the realm. I said the realm, but I guess that too. I meant round, but I guess also the realm. These songs taught me to remember something about my own poems, that the magic of poems is not the intercession that the poems make as themselves. That might be, and often is, very little. And we would behoove ourselves to be honest about that. The magic of the poems lies in the signal, which tells us that an intercession is possible if we were to come and do together as called. But then how does one craft a signal that is significant, that pierces through the chatter of everyday logic in order to sound a call for elsewhere? With the ingredients of association and metaphor, for one, the same ingredients that make poems and potions so potent. Working against the strictures of the English language, my ancestors widened the pockets of possibility by creating signals that worked precisely because of the multiplicity in meaning, the slippage and slipperiness, the excess. So when we sing hush, hush, somebody's calling my name, what shall I do? What shall I do? We sang about that inevitable fate that is death, yes. We sang about becoming still, still enough to feel the heart prick that salvation was awaiting, the one this world doesn't give, and the one that this world can't take away. We also sang about the type of salvation via liberation made possible by our kindred on this earth and in a world that did take away our freedom. In this way, the question becomes more pointed. What shall you do? Will you go under the hush of night? Will you meet those kindred waymakers? Will you breathe with them, conspire? In so doing, my inheritance models for me how to craft a symbolic language that speaks to material conditions and also pushes beyond them. Stay with me now. And then skipping a section. So many possibilities for our commitments, so much discernment required. Stay with me, please. Because it's here at this edge, this possibility that I'm calling out to you into your discernment, earnestly, right here at this particular crossroads, under increasing surveillance, against the clamor of everydayness that tries to propel us into more of the same. I'm calling out to you to meet me, trying to shape the words, the songs, the choreo poems that might seem like a matter of no import to the inattentive, might seem just like another death chorus, but to you, it might be a whisper and a register that can only be registered against your skin. And with that heat of breath on your flesh, maybe you know a surging chorus of aliveness when you feel it. Maybe you recognize the song of liberation, gloriously stolen back by kindred, whispering like this. Can you catch it? Stay with me, because none of this can stay the same. Breathe with me, conspire. We ain't got long to stay here. Thank you.
Ooh. So I'm thinking of signals and calls. Signals and calls now. So I'm going to read towards the end of this essay, my essay around enchantment. I'll skip around a little bit too. There's some owl poems that begin this essay, just so you know. One of the first entries into the practice of magic is the relearning of enchantment. But why be enchanted? Why lend oneself to a way of being that insinuates surrender or being caught up beyond your control? In many versions of the tarot, the card that opens the deck, and thus the spiritual journey of transformation, is the Fool. The Fool is often portrayed with childlike innocence, so captivated by something in the surroundings they may walk right off of a cliff. Yet it is this very quality of enchanted attention that moves the Fool toward the cliff, the edge of what is known, into a new beyond. The Fool is also sometimes referred to as the universe's favorite child. The powers unseen delight in the delight of the Fool, and so all tools required for the journey through transformation are gifted with generosity and grace. This is how we enter the transformative arts. If poetic obsession is held as a practice of enchantment, there is spell work that arises. While enchanted, the poem becomes a vessel, energy summoned and held in the container of line. If the work of healing is held with a practice of enchantment, there is a potential for recovery of loss, whether that loss is of power, connection to the soul, or a type of innocence. While enchanted, when I write about even the most tender suffering and ache of the world, the writing itself becomes an application of love in the form of deep attention and care that touches the page. If the work of social and spiritual justice is held with the practice of enchantment, there opens a portal for all ways of beingness and knowingness to be present, to engage, and to be witnessed. While enchanted, even the slow alchemy of revolution might be graced with something that could resemble play and feel even a bit like delight. Sometimes the owl poems become long nocturnes. This happens when I hear the owls calling to each other at times of dimming and dawning, at dusk and in the earliest morning light. The sounds at these times have a hollow-throatedness, a roundness like a vessel, as if the calls are curving a space in the air. These are the times of day when it becomes most apparent our world is turning, that light and dark come and go with a rhythm we are embedded in, encoded with. These are the times I find myself alternatively in easeful appreciation of being present to witness the transition, the sighing sunset, the beckoning sunrise, and discomfited by the shift urging me along to a new state of being. It is time to prepare a way for being in the night, or it is time to prepare a way for entering the new day. These are the times when the owls send out their voices and I stretch my listening for them. The call and response of their soundings begin to overlap, creating a rhythm without break. One long pulsing incantation through the shifting of the light. I stretch, I extend, I become expanded to hear them. I open my hearing to allow as much of the sound as possible. I hold it with wonder and wait.
Thank you. One of the things that I love about this anthology is all the echoes. And I love that we've structured the reading this way so that we can capture and amplify more echoes. So now we're going to shift to now making something new with what we've collected, right? So as I said before, we're going to do a collective poem with the lines and phrases that we've gathered while listening to each other's work. And we're going to share lines that resonated with us in the order that we read. And we're going to go around 3 times. So since I went first, I will choose a starting line. And for my own, I'm going to choose one of Tamiko's lines. So the one I wrote, and I'm gonna cut it off mid-line actually, a sharp and jam. and say hello to mugwort as it makes its wild and steady. So I'll say that one more time. And say hello to mugwort as it makes its wild and steady.
I collected a bunch of poems, and I'm looking for one that goes well with that next one. So I'm going with and steady. Sound a call for elsewhere. So sound a call for elsewhere.
And I'm starting off with a line from Hyejung. When we are calling out in desperation, when no old form has the answers.
As we live into the day ahead of us.
Sorry, I'm trying to type up the lines too as I'm also moving forward. So all of this a conduit. This is from Destiny. All of this a conduit.
This is from Lisbeth's poem, I think. Swinging out from the lungs like a swift.
And this is from Tamiko. We turn toward home. We turn toward home.
From Destiny, fire in the body and in the bones.
With the rhythm we are embedded in, coded in, from Lisbeth. With the rhythm we are embedded in, coded in.
From Destiny, widen the pockets of possibilities. Widen the pockets of possibilities.
And this is from Lisbeth. There opens a portal for all ways of beingness. There opens a portal for all ways of beingness.
From Hyejung, a calling out from the heart. A calling out from the heart.
All right. That was so beautiful. Thank you all for that round alchemy mixing beautiful poem that we've created together. And also thank you to those of you in the chat who have been making your own poem as we go. This is really an invitation for everyone who is watching this now or in the future to do this in your own life. So to collect poetry and magic from everywhere. If you have been kind of collecting poems, collecting lines with us as we've gone, we encourage you and we invite you to type it up, put it up on Instagram if you want to, and tag us. We're at poetry at Spellcasting, and we'll happily repost it, put it on our story, and share it out. But if you don't want to do that, if you're not on social media, totally understand. Really just this book and this project has really been about, it is about how do we find in our lives the magic and the poetry and the power and the tools and the voices that we have to, as the title says, manifest liberation, create change. And so this is really, there's a prompt at the end of the book that kind of leads you through how to create a collective poem. But even if you don't do all of the steps, this really is an invitation to go through your day with maybe 3 or 4 people, and each of you collect some lines or images or anything that jumps out at you, and bring it together and say it out loud, and see what happens, see what energy you can bring together and send out into the world. So I think with that, we are just at time, exactly at time. So I think we're going to wrap up. Shane, I don't know if, yeah, you are coming back. Okay.
This was really just a very special and incredible event. If you are watching, I invite you to applaud our fantastic readers tonight. I had a lot of fun with the responses in the chat. Thank you all so much for doing this event. It's really inspiring. It's really beautiful. It was a very creative and not like all of our other virtual events have been. So really a very special evening for me. Thank you. For the audience joining us, be sure to check out our event calendar on our website, left-bank.com. You can buy copies of tonight's book, Poetry is Spellcasting. They are available for sale there. I invite you to support our event series when you buy a book from Left Bank Books instead of that other giant place that just had a closeout sale. I don't know, hopefully. Your money goes back into a community. It goes back into St. Louis. It really helps keep our bookstore alive and open. And I thank you for being here, for participating in this event. And I hope that you join us again really soon. So thank you all very much.